A new Seiko 5 sports model has just been released, and this time it's a field watch. The question is this going to be another kind of overpriced disappointment like the original SRPD or 5KX was when it was released? Or has Seiko taken what they learned from their sophomore effort with the SRPE or Dress KX, which was much better received, and applied that to this new model? Well, I've got it here on my wrist right now. Let's take a closer look and see if we can figure that out. Hey guys, this is Dave. Welcome back to Just the Watch. This is a budget watch collecting channel, and Seiko has been the king of budget watches for a long time. But recently there's been a lot of brands that have been challenging them for that title. And the Seiko 5 sports line has kind of become Seiko's attempt to keep their hold on the affordable end of the watch market. And this summer they're releasing the third model in that line. I'm not sure if it's out in the US yet, but here in Japan it has already been released and I've got my hands on one. So today I'm going to give you a full review, and hopefully you'll be able to figure out if this is something you should purchase now, later, or never. Now, if you are interested in watch collecting but don't have a lot of money, definitely hit the subscribe button, because that's what this channel is all about. I feature a lot of affordable watches. We talk about watch collecting. I do LUME comparisons and just all kinds of stuff related to watch collecting on a budget. And also, I recently started selling some t-shirts. So I got my first samples in. This is one of them. It's available now on my online store. So link to that down below in the description if you guys are interested and get your hands on some of these cool shirts. Okay, but let's talk about this new SRPG, which is a field watch, and I'm really excited about that because field watch is one of my favorite kind of watches. And this is now really Seiko's entry-level field watch. And here's what you're getting for that $300. You get a 39mm case, 20mm lugs, just a hair over 13mm tall, with a Hardlex domed crystal covering the top of it. You're getting 48mm lug to lug. And powering the watch, you're getting Seiko's 4R36 movement. So this is a day-date movement with hacking and hand winding, about a 40-hour power reserve. It's essentially the in-house version of Seiko's extremely popular NH36 movement. You are also getting 100 meters of water resistance and some pretty decent lume, which we'll take a look at in a minute. Now, if you're looking at this watch and it looks kind of familiar to you, that's because this is really a refresh or a new version of a previous Seiko 5 sports model. So Seiko relaunched the entire Seiko 5 sports line a couple of years back, but there have been Seiko 5 sports watches for a pretty long time. And one of them was a field watch that bears a lot of resemblance to this, which was their SNZG series. And so really, I think this watch is kind of a new version of that one. But there are some key differences and some pretty big upgrades as well. But the question is, do those upgrades really justify the price? Because you can actually still buy the old model of this for around $150, so about half the cost of this one. However, the older one has the 7S26 movement, which is a non-hacking or hand-winding older movement. It is also a larger watch at 42mm, and I feel like the overall design is not as refined and elegant as this one. When Seiko took the SKX and turned it into the SRPD, they really dumbed down a lot of the specs from what was a more professional level dive watch and turning it into kind of a stylish dive-ish watch. But in this case, with this SRPG, this is a full-fledged field watch, and it is, I think, a significant upgrade from the previous model. So it's nice to see that, you know, as they're charging more money, they are also giving you a more modern movement, more refined design, and I think for what a lot of people are going to like is a more manageable case size. The size in particular is something that I really like. This 39mm size really wears great, and I think it's going to work for a lot more people. It's very comfortable on the wrist, and it has kind of these slightly longer lugs. A 48mm lug to lug is a little bit longer than you would normally see in a 39mm watch. But unless you have really small wrists, I think it's still going to wear just fine. And particularly for me and for guys with larger wrists, that makes it wear really well. It doesn't look undersized at all on my wrist. It just looks like the perfect size, and it's very comfortable as well. So I really like the dimensions on this, especially for my wrist size. Case finishing on the version that I have is all bead blasted. It's a very simple matte finish. There's no polishing, there's no brushing, very utilitarian, but it's a really cool look. I think it looks great like this. And as I've been looking closely at the pictures of some of the other models of this one, if you get it on the bracelet on either the black or the blue, it looks like they've done brushing on the bracelet models. It's kind of hard to tell from the product shots, so I could be wrong on that. Some shots they look like they're still this sort of matte polish, but that's something to keep in mind. Now on these they have included drilled lugs, which is kind of a new thing for this line. It's also very nice for strap changes, so that's a very good functional addition there. Overall, it's just a very simple, elegant case design that does really wear well on the wrist. The dial is where they've done, I think, a lot of the most major changes. And it's just, I think, overall a much more refined watch than the previous SNG series. I really do like the update to the Seiko 5 Sports logo. It just has a very cool, fresh look to it. And I think the rebrand is really working with Seiko. Before, when you would see the Seiko 5 shield on a watch, you knew that it was a cheap watch. And now Seiko is trying to tell you that it's a kind of hip and cool watch. And it's starting to work. I sort of get that feeling more when I look at that. They've also made this a textured dial. It's a very subtle, kind of grainy texture. Not as aggressive as some of those other sand textures that you see. Just adds a little bit of extra interest. And then they've gone and put applied Arabic numerals all around the dial. They're not very tall applied markers, but they are applied. And the numbers are not loomed, they're just painted applied markers. But around the chapter ring, there are small loomed index markers that will enable you to read the watch in the dark. You also get a color matched day-date display that is really well integrated into the design of the watch. And then covering the whole thing, you're getting a Hardlex crystal. And that's probably my biggest complaint, and it's everybody's biggest complaint about Seiko and the entry-level watches. Now with micro brands and Chinese watches, you're always going to get a sapphire crystal at this price range. Seiko, you don't. You get Hardlex, which is basically mineral crystal. So it's almost guaranteed to pick up scratches if you're going to wear this watch as a field watch out in the field. And on top of that, I've noticed that this one tends to have a lot of reflections. So it doesn't seem to have any anti-reflective coating on it, but definitely when you're outdoors and walking through forests and things, you get a lot of reflections from the trees and stuff. Sometimes to the point where it's a little bit difficult to read, but not too bad. Now, there are a lot of different color and strap and bracelet options. This one is kind of a khaki colored one with a khaki colored NATO strap. And the NATO strap they've paired it with is a pretty decent high quality NATO strap, really solid hardware, good stitching all the way around. Not particularly soft, but it feels very rugged. And I don't know if this is something that comes with all the watches that are shipped out, but mine came with a Seiko branded Bond NATO strap as an alternative, which was kind of a cool little add-on. I think it looks good on either of the NATO straps, but this being 20mm lugs, it's fairly easy to swap it out to other ones. You can dress it up a little bit with a leather strap and get a little bit more refined look, or you can have some fun with things like sailcloth straps and different colors and things like that. And I think that this is a watch that will lend itself to a lot of different straps. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering how the LUME is going to stack up, because that's something that Seiko is known for. And I was curious too, so I pitted this up in some LUME tests, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But first I want to talk a bit about my new t-shirt store. So there's a link to that down in the description. Again, this is one of the shirts that I have there that I'm offering. And I have actually a lot of different designs. I didn't go with only just kind of logo merch sort of stuff. I do have some logo shirts. If you're interested in getting a channel logo shirt, you can get one of those. They're pretty heavily discounted. But I thought it would be fun to just try and make some cool original designs for people who are interested in watches. Things like this with the F91W. I've got some shirts where I've worked in some fun Japanese text as well. The shop is online now and shipping to pretty much anywhere internationally. I'm also running a 10% off sale. There's a coupon code for that down below in the description with the link. If you're interested in checking those out, please do. It helps support the channel. And I'd love to hear you guys' feedback on what you think about the designs that are there. And if you have any ideas for other ones you think I should try and put together, let me know. Okay, so let's talk about the LUME on the SRPG. So the LUME is good for a field watch. The hand brightness is great, and something that I didn't expect was that Seiko did a bicolor LUME layout with this. So the hour and minute hand are loomed in this really bright blue LUME color, whereas the second hand and the LUME pips at the hour markers are all in a kind of standard green. It's kind of surprising to see Seiko do that and to see them do it on one of their entry-level watches like this, and it does look great. Now, I do wish that the LUME pips were larger, or even better that the numbers themselves have been loomed, but those LUME pips do hang on pretty well. And when I stacked it up against a couple of other field watches that I have, this one definitely came out ahead. In fact, at its 1 hour J score, it scored a 9, which is just under the Seiko Samurai. So the hands are actually brighter than the Seiko Samurai, but the LUME pips are dimmer, and so when you average those out, it comes in just behind it with a score of 9, whereas the Samurai scores a 10. So even with those small LUME pips, still pretty impressive LUME. Now, overall, I really like this watch. The design, the comfort, the look, the style, I really enjoy wearing it. But those negatives that I mentioned are pretty significant, especially at this $300 price point. I would have loved to have seen a sapphire crystal, especially one with some AR coating to cut down on the glare that they've got in here. And it would have been cool to see the numbers completely loomed as well, to sort of bump up that LUME even further. And Seiko still has refused to put a signed crown on this watch, which is surprising because they've gone through all the effort to rebrand the Seiko 5 line as this new, fresh, cool line of watches. And I feel like having a signed crown would add that much more style points to this line. But the biggest problem with this watch is the price. At $300, there's a lot of competition, especially from micro brands. I've got the Boulder Venture in, which is just a little bit more pricey than this, but offers a titanium case, sapphire crystal, and 200 meters of water resistance to the screw down crown. And you get kind of the same thing from the Axios Pathfinder, which I also reviewed. Again, better specs across the board, which right now is available for $300. So right now, I feel like buying this watch is something that you'd have to be really sold on Seiko and on this design to pay that price for this. But here's the thing with these watches. When they're first released, they release at the retail price, and the Seiko prices tend to drop. The other two Seiko 5 Sports models are now selling well below their retail price, and I'm fairly sure that within a year, this one will drop down to around $200. And at $200, I think that this is a really easy buy if you like this kind of watch and if you like Seiko. So that would be my recommendation, would be to wait for the price to drop if you really want to save the money. Seiko brings a lot to the table that micro brands have a hard time matching in terms of brand identity, a proven track record, and the comfort of knowing that the company's going to be around for many years to come to back up any warranty claims. But I'm curious to know what you guys think. How many of you are lining up to get your hands on the latest Seiko 5 Sports model? How many of you are going to be sitting on it, and how many are just going to pass altogether? So drop me a comment down below, let me know what you think. And I'm sure there's going to be some more reviews of this watch coming out, so I'm curious to see what some of the other reviewers out there think of it. I was talking to Shane, and I'm pretty sure he said he picked one of these up and has one coming in, so eventually you can check out Relative Time for his take on this. And he did a review on the previous SNG model, which I'll also leave a link down below in the description if you want to see what the old one's about, if you're still interested in getting your hands on that and saving some money. But that's it for me today. Do me a favor, check out the T-Shirt Shop. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you next time. Bye.